So Sam A, called for open sourcing.
Our existing AI lead at a time when nations worldwide are vying for greater access to the technology will make it easier to bring more countries into this new coalition, making sure open source models are readily available to developers in those nations to further bolster our advantage, blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right, that's a great idea, but like, why haven't you done it yet? Right? At least that's my feeling, right? It's like, and it's extraordinarily high profile, like the fact that his company is called OpenAI and is very closed AI. And so, I mean, I'm an OpenAI fan. I just don't... It's interesting to see him drop something like that.
I mean, to summarize the other part of the article, though, this is about effectively like nationalization of AI, right? That as this,
right,
you know, the quote unquote arms race kind of kicks off a bit.
Yep.
Exactly. Who will control the future of AI? And a lot of this is AI could have like very, very wide ranging impacts in terms of how it disrupts the economy, in terms of when we talk about AGI and AI. We'll use that term a lot: artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence. If you have technology that is effectively smarter than humans and they start taking jobs, that's huge. We've never really had that level of unemployment, and there's stuff to be said about the industrial revolution and like the internet revolution, and I think we're coming to another one. And the ranging impact is unclear, and it does seem like governments are well poised to hopefully help mitigate all the risks of like basically like 30% unemployment plus. And there's also the other thing of like can it be used for nefarious purposes? We talked a little bit about safety before. Like, could it be used to make weapons? Could it be used to make other like harmful things? Maybe like even at a local level, just like mess with your neighbor. Like just call them a million times a day and send them like bad things. So it has this big potential for like massive amazing changes, like sci-fi level things. But there's also this like huge risk of like it's kind of this insanely powerful technology that might be democratized, and how should we deal with that?
Yeah, and part of the context here is as you get these models bigger and bigger, you start to have power needs that exceed what a company, no matter how big, can field, right? So it starts to become a nation problem from a logistics of, hey, we need access to power that only nation states can grant. And then we also, to your point, have this problem of I've heard it compared to electricity, which there's problems with that comparison, but notionally correct in that electricity affected everything. It enabled things we didn't think was possible. I don't think anybody inventing electricity envisioned that the internet as it currently stands would operate. They might have thought of communication. It's that same sort of problem of many goods, potentially many bad. So it's this broad sweep, right? Some technologies have an obvious like, hey, we should put some guardrails on this because it can really only be used for harm, or it can really only be used for certain things that certain actors have interest in. AI is like useful broadly. The G in general intelligence is kind of the rub here of like it's generally useful in many, many scenarios. And so how do you handle that? So I think some of this is political, right? You're going to need to get bigger and bigger organizations involved. Publicly, OpenAI has a former NSA director on its board, right? You're starting to see politics come into the AI space. It's no longer just geeks in a lab. Now it's pretty quickly becoming countries in a race with each other. And there's two sides to this coin all the time, right? There's the doom and gloom angle of it, of like, oh my God, this is a new arms race. And then there's the positive side to this of what's it like to have a world-class tutor in your pocket anywhere you go? What's it like to be able to democratize intelligence to everyone on the planet? What does the social hierarchy look like when intelligence is now too cheap to meter? Like, what do you do with that? We don't know. There'll be entire episodes, I'm sure, of this podcast on that where we debate that. But this feels like one of the first times where publicly there's been a leader in the AI space essentially saying this is becoming a nation state problem. Right. You started to see it in politics too, right? You have the Trump campaign, and I think I don't know if Kamala Harris's campaign has said it, but both of them have positions on AI that AI will need to have a government conversation. So you're seeing this move out of the realm of just tech, and this is like proof of that. Sorry, Jacob, I cut you off.
No, I think it's like you were making good points, and it's worth just reading this intro because like it sounds like it might not come out and say that this is a nation state problem, but like you can feel it, right? It's like he's saying it's an urgent question for our time. The rapid progress being made in artificial intelligence means that we face a strategic choice about what kind of world we're going to live in. I mean, that's an existential opening,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Will it be one in which the United States and allied nations advance a global AI that spreads technology's benefits and open access to it?
Right.
Which is a very maybe I agree with it, but there's an implication there that the United States is they're the ones who are going to make it open and beneficial, right?
Right.
Or is it an authoritarian one in which nations or movements that don't share our values use AI to cement and expand their power? That is a very common leadership structure in the world, and
yep. And that next
Sam
sentence
is drawing
is something.
Sam is drawing a distinction between that leadership structure and the United States, which is something that can be argued as well.
And the next sentence after that, I think, is really true, and I wish AI Twitter grokked this a little better. There's no third option, right?
Right.
We're not stopping this. There's no e-brake on this. So now we have to navigate the world we're heading to. And so much of the discourse seems about should we be going down the path? And you're like, look, the rock is rolling down the hill.
Yeah. So, I mean, like to your point, Chris, I think we've discussed this previously. I think it's been certainly discussed in like Twitter space and stuff, but to have such a public figure really go out and kind of draw a stake in the ground and make it so publicly available is pretty novel. And again, I think we'll have entire podcast episodes about this, but I think it's the start of a big discussion about it. And even looking at like whether it gets to like the AGI and like massive intelligence is still to be said. But even in terms of the amount of money being thrown at the platform, right, from all these big tech companies, the R&D and stuff like that, that alone would make it worth being overviewed by the government. Let alone.
I think that's a worthwhile point to call out for everybody. Is I don't know. We've lived through some tech waves, right? I lived through internet. We've all lived through Internet of Things, which flopped for fairly obvious reasons in retrospect, right? Like it required a lot of coordination of APIs across companies. It didn't make sense. Smartphone revolution, social media revolution, got that order wrong, but you get the point. There's sort of an argument of like, is this different this time? Is this like a different revolution? And the only argument for why this is different is that you're seeing all of the major tech leaders devote an inordinate amount of resources to it, right? And so at any level, that should make people go, there must be a there to some extent. So if I'm not in tech and I'm looking at this going, why should I care? Well, if all of the companies agree and they're all dumping as much resources as they can possibly manage towards it, that tells you there's something there, or all of them got it wrong. And the odds of all of them getting it wrong feels pretty low. Tech is not immune to hype cycles. We have had plenty of hype cycles in tech. So I always remember that in the back of my head, but God, it doesn't feel like it this time. It feels like we're having real products with real usage, something we didn't get with Internet of Things. I mean, what's your biggest success out of that? Like Nest, right? Like this is a way different order of magnitude. ChatGPT is the fastest consumer growing product in history, right?
Yep, that's right.